typically would have some configurations. Say it could be database passwords or IPs, right? And you want to run Puppet or Chef to apply them. If you're writing tests, would you want to test it, run those tests locally, or is there some value that you can have it on the CI, or do you want to compare, or do you want to go with both approaches? Running those tests to test whether all of your infrastructure is up.
Ideally, you want to make your test, all the tests as part of the CI. So when you could have a pipeline or maybe you could run some of the tests after you do the deployment to an environment, or you could run them regularly at some frequency. So definitely having them as part of the CI would be better, because we come to know there are two ways we use it. We use these tests when we set up a new environment. When we set up a new environment, there's nothing running. All our tests will be failed. And as you set up each environment, each of our tests will go free from one, right? And then we keep the test running regularly so that we are literally notified if something changes in the configuration or something breaks. Those are two ways we are using this test.
Guys, we have already started the other track, so we need to stop.
Without any questions. Alright. That's it. We can catch us offline if they have any.
Yes, I'm Sunita. I work for ThoughtWorks. I've been there for the last 1 year. My role is quality analyst.
And I'm Priyanka. I also work for ThoughtWorks for the past 4 years, and I'm also a QA. So we'll start with today's session. It is test at your service. It's actually a pun on how services test could make your life easier. So we'll understand how doing the testing at services layer can make your functional testing even more faster, smarter, and reliable. We are broadly classified into 3 categories on understanding what is web services, why we are doing it, and how. So while we understand what are web services and how do we test them, we will quickly cover a few of the jargons used in the web services world. Then we'll do a quick demo, and then we'll understand how services layer testing was perceived till now and what are we proposing. Then on a while we'll obviously cover why are we saying that it will make your function testing faster, smarter, and reliable. And then we'll understand how can we come up with a test framework which will actually make you smarter, give you this reusability and non-code repetition benefits. And though we know there are a lot of proprietary tools available in the market like Soapio to do the service testing, but still how can you come up with your own framework if you choose to go with the open source tools. So when we talk about what are web services, we need to first understand what is an API. So let's take an example here. When you go to Facebook and try and use a gaming application, or let's say your luck prediction application, what happens is it asks you some of the questions that can it publish your details onto that application, name, photo, and few other details. So it is similar to exposing some of the information. It becomes my API to that application that it is asking whether it can send these information to it and then get me a response. So now, published interface, what I mean by that is when a component A wants to communicate with a component B, it will always talk through an interface, and that is an API. Now, when this communication happens over internet, over HTTP, this is a web service. When the communication happens between two systems, we need certain standards, certain protocols. These protocols, commonly used protocols, are SOAP and REST. So, can I ask you guys how many of you have done services testing and have used the SOAP and REST? Anyone?
I have used SOAP
Okay.
request.
Okay. So, quickly understand what are these terms. So, when you have to send some data over internet to another service, what will you do is, your data is there, SOAP allows you to wrap it into a contract, or let's say have the data according to a contract, have an envelope and the header with it, and send it to the server. What REST does is, it sends your data as it is. We actually found this funny picture over internet where it was saying that consider Martin Lawrence as your data, and when you apply the SOAP standards on it, your data will become like a big mama before being sent to the server. Whereas REST actually sends the data as it is. So these are basically the communication protocols which are used by web services. Now, when we saw that data is communicated, this data also needs to be in a certain format. The most commonly known formats are JSON and XML. So JSON is more like object notation wherein you have a key value pair, and XML is more descriptive way. So I'm sure a lot of you might already be familiar with the XMLs, right? So these two are the formats in which the data could be transferred over the internet. Now, we'll see, so now we saw that to communicate between two systems, we need certain protocol, SOAP and REST, SOAP or REST, and we need data to be in a certain format, JSON or XML. Let's take an example here. When you go to the bank, to do a lot of actions. Can you guys give me an example? What do you do when you go to a bank? I withdraw money. Sorry? Deposit. What else? In a bank.
Open a new account.
Open a new account. Yeah, exactly. So a lot of things, right? Or open a locker, open a new account, like you guys said. But it is difficult a lot of times to go to the bank always. So what bank has done is they have published a mechanism with which we can do certain actions related to the bank at an ATM itself. So this is kind of a published interface by a bank through an ATM. Now to interact with an ATM, so let's say I am taking an example of withdrawing cash from ATM. What I generally do is, I will have to go give my card details and the PIN number, and then ATM will do some processing, authenticate it, and then give me response. In this case, the response will be money. We'll take a quick example of how this works in actually services world. So now we are taking Picasa web album. A lot of you might have already used Picasa, right? So Picasa, as it's a Google service, it needs authentication. So we are using curl. Curl is a command line client for submitting a request and receiving a response. So we'll use curl. We have to give an endpoint, the web service endpoint to which you are submitting the request. Then we are passing the email and the password like we log into Google. And then the service LH2 is specifically for Picasa web album. So like Google has a lot of other services, right? The service code is different for each service. I want to authenticate myself against Picasa. So I've given this information, and now when I give this, I receive some response, out of which auth is of my importance, right? Now I'll use this auth token to actually submit it to fetch the list of albums for this particular user. So now if you see here, I am passing this authentication token in the header. This header is needed to interpret what information is needed to be fetched by the endpoint. And here, if you see, the endpoint is different to fetch the album, right? So when I submit this, in the response, like we discussed, we will get either in XML or in JSON. This is the response we have received in XML. Now here, if you see, at the top we have feed. So this is the feed response. Then if you see here, entry. Entry is corresponding to the number of albums you have in that particular account. We'll also show you on the web that this particular account has only one album and the title is Vodka. So if you see Vodka, Rackspace QA account, Vodka is the title and number of photos is 1. Can you go back to the XML? Yeah, so here if you see, the title is Vodka, the number of photos is 1 here. So similar information we have received here, right? Now let's go back and see So this was an example of how do you test this services manually. We have actually gone a step ahead, used the authentication, used it as an input to my another service and fetched the response. Now, how many of you are familiar with this pyramid? Okay, quite a few. So this is a pretty well-known test pyramid wherein we say your unit test should form the base of the pyramid, approximately 60% of the test. Then comes the services layer wherein you are mostly doing the integration testing that forms approximately 20%, 20-25%. And the UI test should be as minimal as possible and should form 15% of your soup. Now, this services layer is important when you have applications being built for multiple devices. So these days, an app is built for the web, for the iPhone, for iPad, for Android and multiple devices, right? That time we try to have a robust service layer so that the functionality can be same and the UI can be rendered differently. For this, if you concentrate your functional testing at this layer itself, imagine the benefit that you will have. You could test the functionality much ahead in advance and you will have to concentrate only the UI related testing at your UI layer, right? For the demo purpose, we'll also quick a test example right now. We'll see, given I'm logged into Google account, when I visit Picasa, then I should see all my albums. We'll take this test example, run it using run it for the UI layer, run it for the services layer and see the differences. So for the UI test, what we have done is we have written the test in Java using WebDriver and TestNG to run it. So let's see what it does. It will actually open a Firefox browser, log into the Google account, go to the albums page, view all album, and it will assert on, see if there is one album or not. So it logged in. So the album was vodka and number of photos was 1. So it did that much and the time taken was, it's fine, we have a screenshot, yeah. So here, for the service test, we are using Python, using the unit test to run it. So let's see what it gives. So now it authenticated the user and again got the feed of listing the album and it ran in approximately 154 seconds, right? So now let's see what is the immediate inference that you guys could arrive at. Anyone? Yeah, right. So we could see that the service test, it took approximately 1.5 seconds and the UI test actually took approximately 5.5, 6 seconds. Imagine if we have a test suite of 1000 tests. You could calculate the timings, right? It would take to run your test.
I have another observation. The thing is, maybe because I've been doing some command line programming long ago, I found it easier to have written the service test. At least it looked easier to me than the other test, which is
The UI test, yeah, in Java.
or maybe I'm not familiar with the
Yeah, maybe that's the case because otherwise it is
Generally,
not
QA is
right.
about
Yeah.
30 minutes away from not a minute.
Because they could see the UI and
So the game might ask the question, which is what you want.
Yeah, can we just maybe
Yeah.
again.
so
I'm suggesting here that prefer service test over UI test.
we are not saying that. So we'll infer that again. What we are trying to say here is use services layer to do a lot of functional testing also, right? Don't use only UI layer to do all your acceptance testing and the functional testing. Also use the services layer. Use these web services, the request and response, let's say for one service, to be used by another service as an input to another service and do an end-to-end testing at this layer also to get a faster feedback. So like we saw the run times are less, obviously we'll have a faster feedback. Yeah.
So we
we have a Python script for the services test, right?
Yeah.
So can you explain how it's working and what we did in script?
So we can show the code later. If you don't mind, we'll just carry on with the benefits of it and how to design the framework. So we have also slides about how to design this test framework that we have written.
Actually, the timing difference that we showed, right? But in an accumulated kind of a sleep, you will not use a browser, you will use the HTML unit kind of a thing, right? So the timing will be improved even in UI.
So how much ever it improves, the thing is it has to, whether we run it in headless mode or in a normal browser opening mode, still it will be higher than the services test. So what we are saying is have a lot of functionality testing
Because
in this
HTML
here.
unit will also deal purely in text. There is no browser, there is nothing, right? It is just a library. Selenium WebDriver library do that.
Yeah, but HTML unit is services testing in a different, using a different tool. It's the same thing.
No, but the timing difference won't matter that much. Is my
No, the point is HTML unit is also a services testing tool. It is not a UI testing tool.
It
So
is.
instead of Python, they are doing that. That's all.
So HTML unit, another disadvantage is you can't test JavaScript heavy take tests with it. So it will not work at all, right? So you need Selenium or WebDriver, or even there are JavaScript libraries that allow you to test JavaScript. So it won't work in all situations.
So I have a question regarding the statistic question that 60% of test should be of service percent.
60% should be unit test. Yeah.
Or 20 to 25% should be a services test. The case with the, I can give you a real life example. 10,000 plus test suits in the UI or CLI, we call it service. The moment we start writing a service test, it gets tightly coupled with the dev code. Is that correct?
When we use the services test, in this case, we generally mean like using the exposed web services that the developer gives, not so much the API testing. We're not talking about that. So generally what happens nowadays because of the MVC pattern and all of that, right? Or even from the past, developers usually write code that says, you know, there are these certain services which allow you to do all of this request response. And then your UI pretty much uses those services to actually fetch the data to render it. So we're talking about harnessing that layer to run functions.
So a layer on top of API which cumulatively form a business function.
Something like that. So
Again, my
selective web services.
experience is that now this test automation has been evolving, and then people have made a mistake of 10,000 test case would be the layer. So what would you recommend? I can take it offline, but
Yeah, we'll take it
Let's
after
discuss
the
that.
presentation. Yeah, we can discuss that. So the other noticeable change that we found with this services test was it was pretty much immune to the UX UI changes. So imagine a new website that is coming up. It will have a UX UI changes every now and then. And if we try and automate that, we'll spend the whole test cycle time in maintaining that test suite. So here, with this, we can actually concentrate the energy to test the functionality still in an automated fashion. Or even with the curl, we can test it, so have a faster feedback. So now comes the third point, how is it making me smarter at work? I would like Sunita to take us forward through that journey.
Thanks. So I'm going to go to this side. So I'm actually going to be using a little bit of the board also, so if you can sort of settle down. So we had a quick overlook at what web services testing is and how it is making our tests faster and how we can perceive that it would be more reliable. Now I want to just talk about how you can write your test automation framework in a sort of smart way so that you don't spend a lot of energy and time in trying to fix issues with the test suite. Like Priyanka mentioned, I really don't want to go into whether you should automate or whether you should buy a SOAP UI license and use it and all that. That really depends on the project. What I'm saying or what we are saying here is, if you do decide to build an automation framework for whatever reasons, we want to give you some of the learnings we have had. We have been working on a services layer test automation framework in the last 1 year or so, and we've had some difficulties and some learning, so we just wanted to share. And to make it easy, right, we kind of categorized our learnings into 3 different buckets, and we mapped it to the object paradigm, which how would you describe an object? By its identity, state, and behavior. So we said, okay, let's group our learnings into identity, state, and behavior, and then talk about it. Before I actually go into the framework bit, I just want to go over the test flow itself, right? To understand first, what are we trying to automate? What are we trying to build? Would it be visible if I do it here? 100% sure. Can you move to this? He's here, so yeah, I'm sorry. So what I'm saying is, this is my web service. Okay, so this is like a web service. Is it visible? No. Is it better? Okay, so this is my web service. Here is my test. Okay, but the idea behind this is from my test I need to make a request. So this is my request. I need to make a request to the web service endpoint, and if everything goes well, if my request is correct and everything goes well, this does some processing and returns a response. Right? Back to my test. What is it that I'm actually doing at my test? I'm looking at some data in this response, right? I'm trying to extract some data. So for example, if you look at the Picasa XML that came back, it had a feed, and then there were all these entries, right? So in my test, I would probably be saying extract the title of that entry. If it's vodka, what do? Assert actual equals to expected. That's what we do, right, at our test. So this data is what I'm looking for in my test. Now, this sounds good. This is a great beginning point for my test automation. What I'm saying now is that because I am dealing with these data formats, right? I'm dealing with XML or JSON. Very soon I'll find in my test that it's becoming very difficult for me to parse the XML, extract the data, and do all of these data processing at my test layer. It's really difficult. It's annoying. You have to do it in every test. So what we're saying is very simple. It's just object marshalling, which so this is So that crumpled up piece of paper is actually supposed to represent a person object with name, age, gender, all of these attributes. When I say serialize, what am I doing? I'm just marshalling that object into this document, descriptive, right? And the reverse process is called deserialization. Is this kind of clear? What am I saying? I have an object with name, age, and everything, and then I have this descriptive XML which will describe the object for me with the same thing, person, name, age, and all that, and then deserializing. So I'm going to take this serializing and deserializing concept to here. What I'm saying is each request or each response is a separate class, or it's defined as a separate object. The feed and the entry and all of those response attributes that I got back are attributes in the response class. In addition to that, I'll also provide a method in my response class that says XML to object or JSON to object. So then in my test or via my client, when I get the response object, I probably build a response object, and so I can say response.feed.entry.title. Accessing it becomes very easy. And then it's obviously reusable, right? So I built this request and response and possibly using them in several different tests. In my test, it becomes very easy for me to get all those attributes. So this is sort of like the idea number one. Maps very closely to the page object pattern. How many of you know the page object pattern for web search for web testing? Okay, so the web page object pattern is very simple actually. If I have a web page with a text box and a submit button, I define a class that kind of encapsulates that web page, and I'll have maybe the identifiers to that text box, identifier for the submit button. I'll also have methods, click text box, click button, enter text box, right? Everything is encapsulated in one web page. Something changes, you go and make that change in only one place. This is the same thing. I'm saying request and response are now my domain objects. Everything about that describes those objects sit in that class. All the methods for serializing and deserializing also sit in that class. So this is idea number one. The main advantage is of course usability, readability, and all of that. But Additionally, if tomorrow the developers add a new format, say they want to now do data exchange with JSON, comment out your XML to OBJ method, add JSON to OBJ, don't change anything else, you're good. So this is one learning we had while building our services. We're calling this behavior. So the same thing, right? If from my test, I make this request to the web service endpoint, I need a client by which I do it. Like your curl, which we just showed you, is a command line client for making HTTP requests. I need a programmatic client. So for example, if I'm listing albums, I probably have a client that says list underscore albums, right? So I have a client method. Yeah, it's going to be difficult, but list underscore albums, right? I'll take the user ID, I'll take the auth, I'll take whatever I need, and then I'll construct this request object. I'll make the thing to the endpoint, and then I get back to response. Now, this additionally, apart from this request that needs to go into the, give me 1 second, please. You're distracting me. Sorry. Apart from this request that is being built along with this request object, you need things like headers, right? We just saw that Google authorization header and all of them. These are all common things. They are usually protocol specific. What we are saying is separate out those layers. We are saying the web service specific clients sit on one layer and the protocol specific clients sit on the other layer. So sort of this is common functionality. Take it out, put it in a separate, you can have SQL connectors, you can have REST connectors, SOAP connectors, things that all services tests will use. So the advantage is obviously reusability. Also, like from a product level, if you are in different groups, all of you are testing different types of services, no need to reinvent the wheel, use the same REST connector or the SOAP connector or whatever, because it has all that information that REST or SOAP protocol is expecting, like headers and metadata and things. Also, if you want to get really adventurous, you can have your REST client in one language and your tests and clients in another language. Yeah. And then state. So quick screen grab of Angry Birds. If I want to get to level 9, I have to jump from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and 5. Very similar, or I can take this and apply it to, like, say, e-commerce website testing, right? If I want to test payment, I need to be authenticated, I need to have shopped for one item, I need to have checked out that item, and then I get to payment. So, you know, we're talking about state here. There are some known states in your application. The idea, the big idea behind this is take all those known states and formalize them and call them fixtures. So I would have, in this case, if I wanted to add a photo to an album, I would need a user with at least one album, right? So I can formalize that state. I can say fixture user with one album, right? Then in my test, maybe my test is saying I'm trying to add a photo. Maybe my test is saying I'm trying to delete an album. Doesn't matter. The fixture is there. In my test, I can import that fixture or inherit that fixture. Now, in my test, all I have to do is add that photo to that existing album. I already know the album is there. It's there in my setup. I add the photo to the existing album, and then I assert that the photo was added. Things like that. So what we're saying is having fixtures help you build end-to-end tests, and also prevents duplication of code, and makes your test very readable. In your test setup, I don't have to do login as user, check out, add item, check out, blah blah blah, and then get to the point which I actually want to test. Formalize all of this into a fixture and put it somewhere else. Inherit that fixture, reuse the fixture across different tests. As long as you remember to tear down in your test, your fixture should be good enough to go. So that is the readability and all of that. So now, in conclusion, what are we saying the best practices are? All these communication objects, define them, formalize them, give methods for built-in marshalling and serializing and deserializing. Decouple your business layer from implementation, very usual OOPS practice. Use that for using the web services layer. And hopefully, if you build your tests in a smart way using good practices, and obviously they are faster, obviously they are more reliable, you have more time to do the actual testing, which is what? Exploratory, performance. All the things that in an agile project, we find ourselves, we never have time for. Because we are just scrambling to deliver that automation suite and maintaining it, making the build go green. We don't have time for this, and this is what really we are being paid for. So we are like saying, let's move more functional regression tests into services layer and focus on the thing. So that kind of brings us to the end. We can take questions. You can come up to us and we can show you the code also in case you want to. It's a little difficult to explain these design concepts, just on board. But if we can walk you through the code, if you are interested, we can show you.
Any questions?
Questions?
So I think I just So another thing is I could not make out a big difference between this idea of what you were saying in terms of having an object represent the response being represented by an object. That's what SOAP does anyway. I mean that's what SOAP
Yeah.
does, right?
What I'm saying is define it in your test suite as a if I was building my own test. For example, a REST, right? I would only get a key value pair response, right? So now accessing it becomes a little bit challenging. And also, sometimes you'll find things like, so this feed has this entry and then the entry has this thing. You can actually marshal it in such a way so that it only has the fields you care about.
That's true, but that's
So-
what SOAP will provide anyway.
SOAP will provide anyway, but if you were writing at a REST, for example, it would not be happening. Then you would be able to.
You're
It's just
also
our
saying-
focus is more on REST.
Also, you're saying that you can potentially use the same test whether you're doing SOAP or test. Is that what you're saying?
Not really. Not really. Test you could, yeah, you could. But how many web services do you have which are in general, when you're talking about your own application, not third party, right? Talking about your own application, how many of them offer both? Usually.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's not really.
So why are they asking to separate protocols?
Reuse it across, other people are using different tests, so the rest bit can be used in
Oh, for the framework to work across.
Yeah, just hiding the implementation details. That's all. In my client, I only have the business aspect, kind of. And then what the nitty-gritty is, adding the header and the metadata and then packaging it and sending it out. Let the other layer take care of it. So that's not rocket science. We're just calling it out as a good practice to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we usually do, but we're just calling it out.
And we have also seen benefits in terms of SSH connector and SQL
Yeah, so
connector
that-
and all of these. Whatever tweakings we want to do in those, we can do that, package it into a separate library, import it into the other test or clients that we want to use for.
So you
So
can
you
use
use
that,
it
extend that
across.
theme to have SQL, even SSH, whatever else you need, keep them all as connectors, all the low-lying thing as connectors, and then it's just giving it a name and trying to kind of compartmentalize it.
Thanks a lot.